Hello and welcome to, I believe, what is the 5th of 10 interviews in the EVPA Transformative Finance Lab interview series. You may be coming to this off the website, where hopefully you will have found a really useful amount of resources, including all 10 interviews, in which case this may not be number 5 for you, it may be number 2 or number 8, but also a number of other bits of background around why we're looking to do this work and what the real aim of this is. And so today we're very lucky to be joined by Axel at ADA, who's going to share some of the background on their innovations lab process. This is a very informal research process. We came up with a great idea that instead of doing this behind closed doors, we should make this open and allow others to join us, but also hopefully to help you shortcut if you're looking to do the similar research process that we're undertaking at the moment. Feel free, as you look through the resources on the website, to dig deeper or to reach out to either my colleague Anya Koenig, who's on this call today, or myself, and our contact details will also be on the bottom of the website at www.evpa.eu.com. And before we jump into the kind of interview piece itself, I just want to very quickly take 2 minutes to explain why we're here and what we're doing, really. So EVPA, as a network for investors for impact across Europe, strongly believes in the positive possibility of capital to have a great impact across the world, but we're also quite realistic. At the moment, there does seem to be somewhat of a gap between problems that are interconnected and not being reached, and walls of finance that we're told are waiting to be deployed, but don't seem to be in a hurry to actually solve these systems-wide changes. So sitting within EVPA and talking to our members at the end of last year, there was a real demand to start talking and thinking about what we could do to face this kind of systems challenge, if you like. Again, I mentioned we're realists, so we're not going to claim that we're going to change the world and save everything, but what we can do is harness the power of our network and also start on a process where we believe there'll be a benefit in providing a platform for organizations to come together, to co-create, to understand challenges, and hopefully come forward and develop new transformational finance mechanisms and outcomes. It sounds like a very big challenge, and it might be, but we're very fortunate to have been supported along this way so far by not only Jacobs Foundation, who have very kindly supported us with resources, but also with over 30 members of the EVPA community who at the end of last year shared a lot of their practices through what we term the CoLab Award. I'm not sure they knew what they were signing up for, but they're now very committed members to a systems change community across Europe. And it's working with these that we're hoping to really do something useful and I hate the phrase, but kind of slightly push the needle or at least encourage others to do a little bit more in this space. So the plan for this process for us is that we're running an interview series that I mentioned. We're doing this openly, not only to walk the walk, but also to share the resources most widely. This will be followed by an Impact for Breakfast event in April that we're working with our partners to really go out to a wider audience. We don't have any of the answers. We have some of the ideas, but none of the answers as yet. And we will follow that up hopefully with a design workshop in May to try and bring some of these sort of ideas together and see where we get to. So as I mentioned earlier, please do stay in contact with us. If you're coming to this video and it's, I don't know, the 1st of July, and you think you've missed out on the whole process and you'd really love to get involved, please do reach out to us. Our contact details are available on the website, and we will make sure you have ways to access us. This is an ongoing process. So that long introduction over, the format of this session is quite informal, as you'll see from here and other videos. The idea will be just to ask Axel to give us a little bit of overview of what their experiences at ADA and the interesting approaches they're taking with the innovation labs before opening up to not a grilling or an interrogation, but just a few questions from myself and my colleague Anya especially, which we already have, but also from the audience that's joined us here today as well. So what we'll probably do is ask Axel to just introduce ADA Innovation Labs, 1 or 2 questions, and then we might go out around the audience and just take some introductions and questions from you as well. And at this point, I am contractually obliged to make sure that I haven't missed anything with my colleague Anya. So have I, is that good?
Well done.
Perfect.
Ready to go. Welcome, Axel. Okay. Thank you, Peter and Anya for the introduction. So I'm Axel de Ville, director for innovation and strategy at ADA. Very in one sentence, ADA is an NGO focusing on inclusive finance for more than 25 years, based in Luxembourg, but active in developing countries in the three regions: Asia, Africa, mainly West Africa, no, Africa as a whole, and Latin America. So today I will just share our experience with the concept of Innovation Lab, which is something that we have launched about 3 years ago, based on an internal request to say, okay, we need to, we feel we do what we always have been doing, and we need to be more innovative, which was, I mean, one pillar of ADA since its creation 25 years ago. And so the idea was to say, okay, how could we promote innovation internally? And also another situation that we were facing is that the organization has built, and we moved from 10 to 50 staff members, and each one was working on his own. We had very, I mean, limited contacts, interactions between the units. So the idea was to say, okay, how could we strengthen synergies? How could we strengthen innovation? How could we put again, strengthen the client-centric approach that we have integrated, really on focusing on the targeted populations we are willing to reach. And all these elements will help us also to position ADA on very specific topics, involve the staff, involve our partners, and create ownership. So based on that, we were thinking about, okay, how do we manage? And we launched a process that we called Innovation Lab. And the idea was to say, okay, let's structure a process internally and with our partners to make to encourage the emergence of innovative projects. It's very easy to do what we have been doing. It's more difficult to really start such a process. And we made it, and just to clarify, to describe a bit the process. First, it comes with an idea. It might be a staff member. It's not the top management or the board. It's a staff member is launching an idea. And for example, we'll take one very practical examples. At some time, someone say, okay, how could we fund young entrepreneurs? Entrepreneurs between 18 and 35 years old, 35 years old, usually don't have access to microfinance institutions because they don't have financial credibility. And the problem is that they don't have professional credibility. And I mean, a lot of people don't know that, but if you take the population or the clients of the microfinance institutions worldwide, most of them are above 30, 35 years old, because they have at least the professional, the activity credibility, some background professionally or in terms of activity. Even if they don't have the financial credibility, at least microfinance institutions can build on the fact that they are already active. For the young people, it's totally different. And it's very difficult for a young person to start a business, to start an activity and to get funded for that. So with that first question, how could we fund young entrepreneurs? Then the second step is, okay, that's an idea that has been launched. Let's identify a leader internally. We need a leader who is, I mean, within the organization, who is a bit visionary and who will be able to drive the innovation lab. And then we ask that leader to build a small team between 4 and 10 people. I would say maximum 10, otherwise it becomes difficult to have discussions. 4 and 10 people, building on the knowledge that we have internally. So identifying people, and we usually open it to the staff. That's how we did. So we inform the staff that, okay, we launch a new innovation lab on youth funding, young entrepreneurs funding, and we identify, or we encourage people with knowledge that might be useful or with a strong interest to join the group. And we also might identify a few external people if needed, but it's not always necessary. And then, so we have that team, we formally launched the Innovation Lab. A first background will be that we will analyze the past experience of ADA on that topic, to present and to have a sort of common basis, common knowledge. Okay, everybody within the group knows what ADA has been doing on, I mean, in terms of young entrepreneurs funding or related to that. And then we start working on a theory of change to also to structure, to activate the reflections, the exchanges, and so on. And we formulate a two-pager with, okay, what is the overall objective? What do we want to reach in terms of young entrepreneurs funding? Where, in which country do we want to do that? What is the schedule? What is the budget? How do we start? What do we try? And then we test our idea with larger groups. And for example, in the example of the young entrepreneurs project that that emerged, once we had the basic concept, we organized within the Innovation Lab one workshop in Central America with 40 partners, another one with 30 people in West Africa, where we had already a lot of contacts, just to challenge our ideas, to challenge our concept, and really to say, okay, this is what came out of our team. What do you think? Please react. And then we adjust it. And once we had that, we decided to test it at small scale. So we identify one partner and we start doing 1, 2 very small credit, about 5, 10, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 euro to a few entrepreneurs, just to test the idea. And we did it several times. Now we have, we are still, I mean, we are testing that with 6 incubators in the 2 regions in order to collect input, to test it. And then now we are able to formulate a more global project. So the idea of the Innovation Lab, I would say, was starting from an idea that has been considered as, okay, that's a good idea, let's think about it. We launch an Innovation Lab until the concept has been, I would say, challenged by external people. And we say, okay, let's try it with what we call test or pilot projects, at very small scale. Then we at that scale or at that step, we start the testing phase. The Innovation Lab is really the all reflection that is taking part between when, the time when the idea has been launched and the time we are ready to practically test it. And it usually takes 4, 6, 8 meetings over a period of 4 to 6 months, maybe a bit more. But the idea is to be very focused on that. And of course, after 6 months, you won't have the whole solution, but at least you will have a structured proposal. You are able to test it, and then it will be a recurring process, I would say, until you really have a good, I mean, a mechanism. For example, in that case, a mechanism that allow us to fund young people. And just to finish with that, practically, and that's the experience we had, we used the Innovation Lab to set up what we call the YES Fund, the YES fee, which is a Young Entrepreneurs Sustainable Finance Initiative. And now it's a project. It's innovative in the sense that it's provide funding for young entrepreneurs up to 2 or 3 years for an amount between 5,000 and 50,000 euro. And the very innovative aspect is that it's revenue based. And being revenue based for young entrepreneurs is a very, I mean, a new way of getting access to funding, because usually for young people, when they start a business or when they really have a small business and they are lacking of plenty of experience, the barrier is that the bank is saying, okay, we give you a credit for 2 years, and you have to pay that amount every month. And for the young people, I mean, it's very difficult. And so we tried it. It took more time than expected to really have the first results and so on. But now we have 5 incubators, 2 in Central America and 3 in West Africa, using that mechanism of revenue-based funding for young people. And so it's really, I mean, opening a new door in terms of financing. And that's really the results that we have with the innovation lab that we set up. Okay, so that was really to promote the ideas and to develop an idea. And when I see the Transformative Finance Lab that EVPA is launching, I mean, if I take the example of funding young people, it's a huge problem, a huge concern. Very few entities are doing it. And I think nobody will be able to do it alone. And this is why we have to set up collaborative approach, collaborative process to come with ideas. And the next step, for example, in our project is that now that we have these 5 actors, I mean, testing it, and they are testing with 5 or 10 credits. So it's very small scale. But within this year, we will do a workshop to gather the information, to gather the experience, and really to go for the next step. Because what we have seen is that when we talk about revenue-based funding, we have discovered that each incubator is doing it in a slightly different way, which is very, I mean, for us, it's wonderful because we learn from all of them. And what we would like to do is to put them all together, because they are not competitive. They are all in different countries, and just to join and their efforts in order to see, hopefully, something that might be spread over a larger scale. So that's as introduction. I hope it was clear.
No, absolutely. It's fantastic. And great sometimes to get actual tangible examples as well of something that's been through the process. I mean, just for my clarity, also the Innovation Labs process that's running at the moment, I mean, that's a great example of a success so far that's gone through and worked well. But sort of, I suppose the question is, how many kind of suggestions are going through the Innovations Lab process, and how do you select which ones, because it is a 3 to 6 month process and it takes some commitment.
Yep.
What's that first kind of vetting process, or is it just open to all, or can you just give us?
I would say that what we did in a very natural way, I would say, is that when we launched the idea and the concept of Innovation Lab, there were several ideas that came on the table. One for agriculture funding, one for insurance, one for capacity building of microfinance institutions, and so on. And we had within our team, we had up to 6 innovation labs in parallel. And from them, I would say that 3 came out with an innovative project, practical projects came out of that, which means that that's the result. Practical result of an innovation lab is when we have an innovative project emerging and starting. And for the rest, for some of them, they were extended and extended and extended, and then people were not participating anymore, and then we closed it. So we said, okay, the period of time is indicative, but at some time, and we had, and I will refer to my colleague Linda, who is on the call as well. She was following up that process, and sometime we say, okay, I mean, for that innovation lab, we just came to the conclusion that it's not working anymore, so we close it. And it's important to close it, to say, okay, then if next year the topic come back again, we can start again. But it should definitely not be a continuous and unlimited time process. Then, because if you do that, it's very difficult to keep the commitment of the people. Okay. So and for others, for example, there were some ideas that were almost came up to the project level, but we decided that it's not what we want to do. So it's out of the scope of ADA. And then we say, okay, it was just a reflection and that's it. And then again, it's important to close it.
And yeah, I have one more question. So just to be clear, one more question. I'm sure my colleague Anya may have a question as well after that. And then to prepare people, I am going to start asking people in the audience if they've got any thoughts or questions. So, not to put anyone on the spot, but just to give you a couple of minutes warm up. I had one other sort of question that interests me. It's quite a wide one, I suppose, but you mentioned that this was started because you had a kind of institutional challenge between people talking to each other and innovation and engagement. I just wondered, and with between these not at all closed four walls, but the idea was, has that been a success, or is the lab process seen as something separate, or has it helped to feed into other aspects of innovation within the organization? Do you have a feel for that? Or?
I mean, what we experimented is that when we start launching the Innovation Lab, it really created a common effort to rethink, to take distance about our daily work and to say, okay, we need to come with new ideas and new projects. And after a year of Innovation Labs, we had to think about a new strategic plan for ADA, a 4-year plan. And we use basically the same process that we built on the Innovation Lab, and basically the results and the notes and the knowledge of the Innovation Lab that has been structured became what we call the orientation note, strategic orientation notes for ADA. So it means that I would say the process and the methodology of Innovation Lab really, first made people working together from different units, because when we came with the, for example, the topic of funding young people, within that Innovation Lab, there were people from our investment unit, from our knowledge management unit, from our Africa section, from all the different units. It was a mix of people. And that was a wonderful opportunity that we built on to define our new strategic plan that has been finalized last year.
Cool.
Actually, Peter, can I have a go? Because that's a topic we are really trying to get our heads around. Also, how to balance or find a process that really involves all the different kind of people that you just described, where I assume there must be also a difference of knowledge and understanding about certain methods that you're describing or that you want to develop, or certain innovations that you're describing. Not everybody may be so familiar with the situation of young entrepreneurs, and there may be experts who have looked at different financing options for young entrepreneurs, for example, and others who are not so well familiar with that particular problem. And we find this a specific challenge in the finance sector. Since we are set out with the Transformative Finance Lab, we are set out to focus on financing solutions to societal problems. We are trying to find a way how we can meet the needs of some segments of the community that may not be so experienced in innovative financing solutions, for example, in blended finance and catalytic finance, whatever the solutions are going to be about, and those who are more advanced, and still allow everybody to participate. What's the role of learning and knowledge in the Innovation Lab? How do you provide some space for that information to travel amongst the participants of the lab?
One specificity is that it has been the Innovation Lab was mainly initiated internally, and it was important to make sure that internal people with the needed expertise were on the Innovation Lab, but we also open it to everybody who was interested by the topic. And so it was very important to find a balance and a mix of people who already know the topic, who have the expertise, and people who don't have that specific expertise but have plenty of other expertise, and will raise questions, will bring opinion, will bring point of views that will generate innovation, basically. Because the problem is that if we work only with the people who know, they will just focus on the limitations, and they will say, of course, young people don't have access to funding because they don't have financial credibility, but they don't have professional credibility, and that's it. Or they will say, oh, but the risk is really too high. And then we have someone working on agriculture who will say, but look, in agriculture, it's very risky, but we have experience. We set up a product that makes sense and that is sustainable. So it's important to have that mix of people within the group. And a second element that is really important is at the beginning, and that's what we said, is that we made an analysis. So usually someone from the group was in charge of preparing a presentation about the topic and the experience of ADA related to that topic, to put everybody on the same level of knowledge, basically. And that was the first, among the first meetings of the Innovation Lab. Okay.
Sorry. So you're saying that some selected people would prepare a note or something in writing that people can review before they come to the meeting?
Yeah.
Or was there also a time slot for presenting that knowledge as part of the lab process?
No, it was the first content meeting of the Innovation Lab. Mm-hmm. Was the presentation. It was usually a PowerPoint, the presentation of the topic and the experience of ADA on that topic.
Okay.
So that was just that was the content to launch the discussion. Mm-hmm. And it's important, I think, to have time within the first meeting to share, and also, also to create ownership and to make sure that everybody feels involved in the Innovation Lab. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, not just the expert. It was very, it gives the opportunity to include everybody.
Yeah, it's to get a diverse range of experience and perspectives, but still have expertise in the room and ensure that
exactly
is there.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Exactly.
Really interesting. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Peter, I'm looking at you. You look like you were going to say something.
Well, just because I lied a minute ago when I said I only had one more question, and I've just thought of another question. So, that's life. I'm just going to throw this one in very quickly, and then I promise to take on other people's points of view as well. I just find this really interesting, and the piece you mentioned about the mix between sort of, for want of a better phrase, expertise and enthusiasm. So that kind of thing of learned experts focusing on limitations sometimes, or just, they've done this before, so there's almost like that roll of the eyes in the room type moment. Mm-hmm. I think it's really interesting. But then I was also just going to ask, how have you balanced, you mentioned going to partners in West Africa or in Latin America. Have you, I suppose, what's the question here? It's how have you, or how did you make the decision to go outside of ADA, sorry, and when did that, did you have any kind of internal conversations about how that will affect relationships and that kind of, as you can tell, not a very well formed question, but hopefully you get
basically, once, Innovation Lab, the risk we had is that, okay, it's good to set up a solution that we will apply on the field. But you cannot come with a solution if you don't challenge it. And the idea was to say, okay, after a couple of meetings, I think 4 or 5 meetings, it was not too long, we made an analysis about existing funding mechanisms for youth and so on. And we came up with that. So we heard about one partner in Guatemala who was doing revenue-based funding. And that was basically fitting with, okay, limited risk or progressive risk and so on. I mean, it fits with the ideas that have been exchanged within the Innovation Lab. So we formulate a 2-pager to describe, okay, the process that we would like to test. And at that time we say, okay, now before to test it, we have to challenge. We have to challenge it. And we got the opportunity we used the opportunity of conferences on the topic of entrepreneurship. And we proposed to the organizers to have one session to present the concept of revenue-based funding and to open it to the participants of the conference. And that was a very, a wonderful way of learning and seeing the reactions. And from there, by the way, we got 3 incubators who knock on our door afterwards to say, okay, I would like to try it in my country. And that's how we basically build the things. So it's the Innovation Lab remain, in that case, internal, but before to test the solutions we had defined, we organized one specific workshop that we opened very broadly. If I can take another example of another Innovation Lab where we felt we don't have sufficient expertise, and then we integrated someone right from the beginning for the whole process. Okay, so in that sense, we remain, we are not too strict. The idea of the methodology is that it's more a principle, a dynamic, and we left a lot of flexibility to the team leader to decide and to find ways to move further as soon as it doesn't take too long. It should not be too ambitious. It should be very practical, because that's also key to keep the commitment. If you ask people, because basically, we all have a lot of things to do, and you come with an idea, a proposal to join an innovation lab, people will say, oh, I'm interested. I don't have too much time, but yeah, I will do an effort because I'm really interested. So I contribute. You can have them for a couple of meetings, but after a while, if nothing's coming out from that, then it's over.
Mm-hmm. Really interesting. Yes. That raises a question for me when you describe about challenges that you see happening in the markets that you are engaging in, and then you work with other partners to get the expertise. And how does that generally work? Is that something that you have tried, where you said, okay, there is a challenge that we observe, let's get a group of people together to jointly reflect on an idea, where you are not providing the idea, but basically you're convening people and you're facilitating the conversation, and then for that group to come up with an idea that then would be tested further on. Mm-hmm. So just to take it a step further outside of the organization, is that something that you have considered and or are considering?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Experience.
Yeah, we are now. I have two examples. One is for long-term funding for agriculture.
Yeah.
If you know entities lending money for 10 years for the to the agriculture sector in developing countries. I'm ready. I'm quite interested to get in touch with them because there are not so many, and it's really critical.
Long-term capital generally,
find a way, but it's not quite easy. And another topic that we are now doing, using the same type of approach as Innovation Lab, but with several partners from Luxembourg, is about the setting up of a financing tool for innovation that is using the donate to invest concept. So it will not be a fund, because we have created an investment fund for microfinance and for other sectors, but when you are a registered fund, it brings limitations. Mm-hmm. And we have partners, for example, some incubators, and for example, the Yes Funding initiative, some of our partners for that project are able to borrow money, to lend it to their young entrepreneurs clients, and they are able to, I mean, they might be able to pay back with some interest, but it's too risky to be proposed to an impact investor. And there is a gap between, okay, up to now, we give them money. And we need, so the idea is to set up a financing innovation tool to be able to lend money or to lend money for medium to long term to partners in order to help them to prepare for impact investors. And this is also because, for example, with the investment funds that we have set up that are regulated, we are doing a great job. But for example, the GAFI limitation, the regulation about the GAFI countries is just a no-go. And then as an NGO, we are active in Senegal, in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Guatemala, in Nicaragua, in Laos, or in Cambodia. All these countries are on the GAFI list. And it means that the investment fund that has been set up to support microfinance institutions in developing countries is just, it's forbidden to go there because of the structure of that specific fund. And so the idea is to have a tool that might be used to bridge the gap, and also to provide funding not as a subsidy, but not with all the constraints of a regulated fund. And of course, one element to do that is to say it's a tool that will be developed based on donations and subsidies. It's not a question of investing in that tool. Okay, because that's the limitation, and that's the frontier between a financing tool and an investment fund.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of, in development finance, you have a lot of project development or project preparation facilities as well that are grant funds that then prepare the project for further impact investing, for example, in infrastructure finance.
But in many cases, you have grant funding for that are provided to the partners on the field, or investment.
Exactly, and so here you would
and between the two, I mean, investment from an impact investor is you should already be quite mature for that. And and the idea is to have I know that there are several other initiatives in the same topic, but and we are now, I mean, creating the same type of approach as the Innovation Lab with external partners, with several partners in Luxembourg to build that.
Interesting. So because you realize you cannot do it yourself, because you don't have the instruments and tools together. It's really interesting. So I'd just like to, because there must be people here in the audience who are also not only here to be the audience, but actually you want to really engage, maybe also have some burning questions, or maybe some comments, some observations that may help Axel in his work, but also maybe are useful consideration for us to take into account with the Transformative Finance Lab. So anybody who wants to engage, please go ahead and unmute yourself. Or if you just want to share a reaction to what has been discussed, how you find it, whether you find it interesting or not. You don't have to. I have plenty of more questions. I'd like to. Yes, Georgia, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. No, just wanted to show my face really and say thank you for this, for hosting this discussion. So I'm part of the European Commission, DG ECFIN, and we are working on different financing tools to support social innovation and system change, increasingly now in collaboration with philanthropy. So we crossed paths with Anya recently, and she invited me to this meeting. So this is just the first such discussion I'm joining, really more in the listening and learning mode, but it has been interesting. Of course, we work in Europe, but we also have microfinance facilities as a poverty reduction tool, and we are targeting women, migrants, people with ethnic background and youth as target group. So this is interesting. My question is actually, because we are trying to have to stimulate more social innovation in the field and within organizations. So I would be interested to hear what gave you the first spark for this innovation lab. Did you see it somewhere existing in another organization and you got excited? Was it totally an in-house experience? And if so, was there something you wish you knew at the start, or whether you wish there was a certain type of capacity building or other support that existed at the start of the event? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. I think in our case, it emerged internally due to the situation we were facing at that time. So it was 3.5 years ago. I mean, a lot of activities, good funding and so on, good perspectives, but a question from the board to say, oh, how could we push innovation? A question from the team saying, we are all working in our own unit and we don't know enough what the others are doing. And another comment from the team that I heard is, I mean, the new projects are always coming from the top. And which is a bit of contradiction, because all of our team is going on the field and the board members almost never go on the field. So the team, I'm convinced personally that the team knows better what is needed on the field than people that are at the management level, I would say, or at board level. So it's important to make that. And at the same time, it's not possible to say, okay, let's put everybody together and all discussing all together and something will come out. So we need to bring a methodology. And that's, and we work a lot with Linda, who is present here, to build step by step, to build a methodology internally that will respond to these questions of innovation, synergies between units, and a bottom-up emergence of ideas and initiatives. Also to ensure ownership from the whole organization. And so, yeah, that's really these are the elements. And along the process, what was also a very good support, I mean, the management was supporting the process. And also we had dedicated people who were in charge of knowledge management within the organization to really build and structure that methodology, to create the tools, create the process, follow the process, and so on. So we had someone who was guiding and making sure that the methodology is evolving and is structuring enough to become a tool, an internal tool that everybody might use.
Interesting. Just to follow up on the question that Georgia asked about the kind of support you wish that or that would help you in your journey, and sometimes it's easier if something new comes to an organization from outside, where you can see it has already happened somewhere. Are you also looking at what others are doing in this field, where you can learn when you build your own methodology? Is there some references that you are using, or you would like to use, or you would like to have, where you can compare notes and see, how have they done it? Oh, maybe we can do something similar.
No, I think it's a very good point, and this is basically why we joined the collab, and that process with EVPA is to, I mean, the innovation lab process is something that emerged internally, and but we are and we build it also using, I mean, experience we had in other networks and so on. But it's very important, and we realize that it's really important to make this process evolving, and therefore it's really useful to hear what the others are doing. Up to now, most of the interactions we had with external partners were on the topics we are working on, inclusive finance and so on, agriculture, and the relationship we have with EVPA or through EVPA is on the process, on the methodology, and to promote innovation within the financial sector, which is fully fitting with what we need. And basically that's I would say value added. The value added of EVPA and the members that are joining this initiative, and by participating in these sessions and the Collab Award last year, we heard and we already point out a few experiences that will enrich what we do.
Yeah, exactly. This is exactly what we felt also, that there was a real appetite for exchanging and comparing notes between our members and having really an in-depth discussion about the methods and the practices really that are behind all this, because it's really difficult to understand this. And the Transformative Finance Lab that we have in mind is actually also about experiencing system thinking and system practice in person while participating in the process. So it's some of the conversations we had earlier. For me, one of the takeaways were really that it's not only so much about the financial product that emerges at the end of this lab process, and in your case, the innovation on financing entrepreneurs, but it is also the process in itself that generates some values in terms of the connections that are being formed, in terms of understanding how other people think about a problem, how other people go about a certain problem. So this is also why we are so interested also in seeing where we can establish these slots or provide in the design of the Transformative Finance Lab, where we can provide for these additional outcomes to happen, and intentionally integrating this into the Transformative Finance Lab. Exactly. Is there any other advice that you can give to us? Also, Magnus, maybe you have some thoughts on from what you just heard. Maybe you have some observations, or Georgia, most welcome to add Linda to join the conversation.
Yes, yeah, maybe I can share some of my thoughts about that. First of all, thank you very much for the explanation and that you show, or that you share this methodology with us. I mean, I came from the strategic development of companies, and most of that what you described is I know from R&D processes, because there you even have this funnel of ideas, and then you have a methodology where you have a maturity of the idea, and which each step you have more commitment or more budget or more time that you can invest on this idea, and then you have even this internal improvement process, and then you make the test for the outside. So, but my experience there is normally there are a lot of ideas in the companies, but they are distributed and they are not together. And even on that, what you described, I think one key element is really communication and this interdisciplinarity, that people talk to each other, which normally in the normal process don't talk to each other. Or that they talk about new topics, because then you have this interdisciplinarity, and then new ideas occur. And of course, it's a question. I mean, communication and clarity, and even transparency in the communication has even something to do with the commitment of the people. So, and that depends even on the if I acknowledge the people and the ideas. Yeah, if I have a culture, finally, it's an innovation culture that you have to develop. Yeah, and maybe one thought again, because on what you were talking, I was thinking about the question of risk management, because that's even something what irritates me a lot, because the people who resist on new ideas, normally they argue with risk. Yeah, but there's no risk. I mean, there's a risk or there's everywhere risk. It's a question of the risk management. It's not, if someone argues, no, there's a risk, we can't do that. That means he's not able to develop a proper risk management for this risk. Yeah, because I mean, And then the question is always, what is really the risk? Let's talk about that, and what can we do to minimize this risk? Yeah, and then your step in the risk management. Yeah, and you can handle every risk. It's a question how you handle it. Yeah. And if we transfer that what you described on this transformative finance lab from EVPA, the question how we can mobilize more finance to push the big transformation, we have to discuss about the risk. Yeah, and to offer risk management which is proper to these investments. Yeah.
Because what we're saying is there is an inherent risk if you try to do something big, if you intervene in complexity, naturally things will go in an unexpected way. That doesn't even mean there's going to be a failure. It's just that it may turn out differently from what you planned for. That's one consideration. And the other consideration could also be about the learning impact that you require in order to advance on an idea. Then you have to try out certain things. They will go in a different way, and then you try again. And it's just part, and you learn from that, and you do your setup then is differently if we go down the line of a design thinking approach, which is exactly what you're describing here. The idea is really about how you integrate the learning into the process, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, my experience is that a lot of people who would like to finance in or invest in impact investing, for example, they would like to create a certain impact, but on the other hand, they don't want to change anything. So they want to have something new without changing anything. Yeah, and this is really risk averse. And risk is a myth. It's not really managed.
Axel,
that's my.
I like the idea, and I'm also very irritated when I listen to the risk issue that is driving decisions, and I say, I mean, and there's a question for long-term agriculture funding. I mean, it's really because when you talk with many people about that, it's too risky. Okay, but I mean, I'm not sure it's too risky. It's just the question of, okay, how can we do to manage the risk and to share risks? And instead of throwing money and donations and subsidies to do that, maybe we can set up a sort of mixed mechanism that will allow to manage the risk and to have the risk taken by people who are able to take it, and others who will not take it. And it's and I think for the transformative finance, I would recommend to take into consideration or to try to change the view and the perception about risk and regulation, because these are two things that I fully understand. That if I am an investor and I would like to get my money back, then I have to consider risk. Okay, but there are players that are ready to spend money. And too often we see that, okay, when we talk about the financial mechanism, it ends up with, okay, I need more than 10% return annually because it's too risky. And I say, okay, but I mean, maybe, I mean, this is not a need. It might be a need for certain players, but not for everybody. And it's not a reason not to do it. So it's really, I think, important to encourage creative solutions, forgetting, that's always what I say, forget about the risk, forget about the regulation, explain what is needed. And then we will talk to the people. I remember when we set up an investment fund, it was 12 years ago, for microfinance. We got a meeting with the regulation body of Luxembourg investment funds, which is very strong. And we said, okay, this is what we want to do. It has been 5 years. We are lending money to microfinance institutions in many countries using the subsidy of the government initially, considered that it was spent. And after 7 years, we came back with all the money. And we said, we got all the money. And then we got a meeting with the supervisory body, and we said, okay, this is what we want to do. And they told us, okay, keep us informed, do it on an informal way, keep us informed. And the idea is that after 2 years, you come back and you tell us if you are able to set up a regulated fund. And that was a wonderful openness from the supervisory body to say, okay, let's do it. And just, of course, there were no investors involved, no private investors. Okay, I understand, but at least it was a way to say, okay, there are some barriers, but we need to do it to learn and to see, to find out, to make a solution emerging. And that's really important
Thank you very much for directing the discussion on the topic of risk. I just have this aha moment where I'm thinking, interesting. We have to accept that in the lab process itself, because we will be reaching out to different kind of investors and actors in the investing community. Some of them have a higher tolerance for risk than others. And obviously, also we know that there's a different categories of risk. There's the financial risk, and there is the impact risk. We also have grant makers that have a very low tolerance for impact risk. So they try something out, and they need to provide evidence for success, because maybe it's a public agency and they need to report back to Parliament and the taxpayer that their money is actually well spent. So there is also something well spent in the sense of reaching so many beneficiaries, for example. So I think this aspect of risk is really important, that we recognize that different actors that will be participating in the Transformative Finance Lab have different understanding of risk, and really make this conversation also very transparent when it comes to prototyping and developing new financing solutions, to say, so what level of risk would you be willing to absorb, and what's your level of risk that you want to absorb? So really interesting. Thank you very much for pointing to that really important aspect. We have 2 more minutes, unfortunately, until the end of the day. Magnus, can it be a very quick one? Because
very quick. If we are talking,
there's another conversation on this channel. So that.
Thank you very much for your comments. It's very helpful. If we are talking about risk, we always have to talk about the risk if I'm doing nothing, or if I innovate nothing. So if we are talking, for example, for the risk concerning the big transformation, the question is, what happens if we don't succeed in the big transformation? Yeah, because that's, we always have to reflect. And another short point is, for me, the benefit or the vision or the idea triggers me a lot more than the risk. So we have to be clear on the vision, because that motivates me a lot more than to be afraid to drop in a risk.
And that's really an interesting other aspect, to align people around a common vision, rather than only focusing on the risk, what may go wrong. So there's a higher pull factor there, bringing people into the room, than just focusing on things that could go wrong. Yeah, really interesting discussion also around the vision aspect. I'm sure all of you who are here today will enjoy our next upcoming sessions. There is actually one which we're just about to put on our website on the 16th of March with the Global Innovation Lab for Climate Finance. Georgia, I think you will also enjoy that very much. It's a public-private collaboration between several development agencies, government development agencies, and private institutional investors, big money involved. And they take an idea that comes from outside, that is proposed by financial intermediaries, all sorts of actors, and then they jointly work on that idea and jointly develop this idea further. And then there is a massive amount of funding available to prototype that idea. It's really an interesting process. And I'm so much looking forward to that conversation. And before that, we actually have a number of other interesting conversations I'm just putting, or maybe Peter, you can add the link to the public interview series again in the chat, so we can have a look at this. There is the next one's upcoming is the open social innovation process that has been prototyped by, no, actually it's the TransCap initiative, wonderful initiative. I love them. Dominik Hofstetter of Climate Kick, Georgia, you may know them. They are really, and Magnus, this is your topic, really. It's about the big transformation. It's about collectively building projects and then raising funding for that. It uses system practices all through. Dominik Hofstetter is really a thought leader on this aspect of transformation and capital. I can only recommend you join that session. I'm really looking forward to that. Another session I'm really looking forward to is Lab of Tomorrow with GIZ. They are prototyping jointly in a collaborative effort, developing business models that address systemic solutions. So it's more the entrepreneurial approach, whereas TransCap initiative is more on the financing side. The Lab of Tomorrow by GIZ is a collaboration between corporates, between investors, between entrepreneurs to come up with business solutions to societal challenges. And the other one next week, all next week, is the Open Social Innovation with Project Together from Germany, which also has been supported by many of our members, EVPA members, such as BMW, Vodafone, KfW Foundation, has been a wonderful Bosch Foundation as well, wonderful solution in cooperation with the German government to think about big societal challenges and then have a crowd open social innovation process to develop some ideas about how to address these challenges and then also have some funding for prototyping them further. It's a wonderful approach. And the week after is with the Global Leadership Academy of GIZ, which focuses very much on the methodology and the leadership capacity within each of us. So it's really also about individual leadership and organizational culture that is required to really innovate and take your environment, your organization to the next level as part of such innovation processes. So all of them really exciting. I hope you can join us next time. And Peter, I'll leave it to you to close the meeting, because
I was just going to say you're a great example of what Magnus was saying about enthusiasm being better than the risk of getting kicked out of our Zoom meeting. So that's as you can tell, we're very excited about this series, and I really do hope you'll join with us. As we always say, you don't get away. Now that you've joined one meeting, you will be kept in the community. So, good luck. But also, hopefully, you'll find it really useful and interesting. And thank you very much for your time today. We'll also let you know when this video and the transcript are also up on the website as well. And so with that, enjoy the rest of your day. Have a fantastic afternoon. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.